Hi everyone, this is Navika Chowda, a cloud engineer, Microsoft's most valuable professional, and a LinkedIn top voice in cloud computing. I warmly welcome each one of you to the 19th episode of Tech Chat with Navika, wherein today we would be discussing about a very interesting topic, that is Microsoft Intelligent Data Platform. And in order to help us understand that a bit more better, I have an absolute expert with us today, that is Jasmine Greenaway. Jasmine is a senior cloud advocate at Microsoft. She's an extremely experienced professional, having 15 plus years of working experience in the IT industry. Additionally, she is a woman in tech leader. She is an international speaker, and she is an inspiration for all of us. Jasmine's technical expertise lies in the era of cloud, software engineering, data security, data literacy, and the list seems quite long. Thank you, Jasmine, for joining me in today.
Thank you so much for having me, Navika.
Great. So then let's get started without any further ado, because this is a topic that I am very, very interested to talk about. All right, then. Data is an extremely crucial and key component of any business, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in order to transform the business or innovate the business, henceforth, it becomes very important to handle the data um, very carefully and henceforth, at least from the perspective of security and analysis and scalability.
Mm-hmm.
And that is exactly what we are going to be talking in today's episode. That is Microsoft Intelligent Data Platform. And it'll be great, Jasmine, if you can at least touch base at the first place and help us explain as to what the Intelligent Data Platform is all about.
Right. Yeah. So the Microsoft Intelligent Data Platform, I mean, at its core is a platform. And what that essentially means here is that um, you have really a big swath of services that help you get AI ready. And I can talk a little bit more about that in detail, as well as across databases, across our specific AI services, also focusing on analytics, and of course, most importantly, security. And so all of these services are really just cohesive set of ways to get you and your company, your business AI ready under on Azure, or
Right, right.
specifically on Microsoft for services, because it's not just Azure. There's lots of ways to leverage Microsoft services to be AI ready.
Right. It's sort of just an amalgamation of all the best services in these four categories that you just named.
Yes.
That's true. Just to go a bit more deep into it and understand at least the why part of it, as for the people who are not aware of it, as to why should one move into the Microsoft Intelligent Data Platform. It'll be great to if you just can help us make us understand that. Like, for instance, if someone hasn't moved or migrated into Azure yet, and a business is handling the data on premises, in that particular case, there are too many issues that one faces with the data, right? With the data handling, because it comes from different sources altogether. So it just, adds up to inconsistency and incompletion at a certain point of time. The data becomes fragmented. I think like
Mhm.
that's one thing that Intelligent Data Platform can help solve. So if you could just add something more to the list, and which will also help us understand the why part.
Yeah. So, a lot of the things, I think one of the things that so my specialization in cloud advocacy is around data. So that is
Right.
really where my domain lies. And one thing that we say here at Microsoft is that your data isn't as good. Your data has to be as good as your AI. So essentially the AI that you want to use, that especially because data is fueled, or AI is fueled by data, you have to make sure that your data is clean, it's consistent, and it's actually useful and helpful. And sometimes, when you're working in a large business or large company, you get a lot of tech debt, and that also cascades into your data. So you can leverage the cloud specifically, or data tools and services to really fix those problems that you need. So that's one part, this intelligent data platform part. But then there's this other piece where you're able to leverage AI, and really gain some really great insights on your data, and also have your data ready to either power a module, or sorry, excuse me, not a module, but a
Mhm.
model, or even do some very specific and some very tailored searching for your customer base with a model like an LLM, like a large language model, and aside with your data. So it's really of just, again, like you were saying, this amalgamation and a set of these services to make it cohesive. And so when I'm talking about the idea of being AI ready, it's getting your data in a place where it's ready to be consumed by an LLM and used by an LLM. It's talking. We're also talking about um, using intelligent platforms, or platforms that apply some level of intelligence to help you make sure that you're querying, you're working with your data efficiently. So the main purpose is really developer productivity, or just not even just developers, for anybody across the workplace, because everybody's touching data in some way, shape, or form. It's like impossible to not, especially in these technical roles, from spreadsheets all the way to like being a database administrator, all the way up to being somebody who's a C-level, right? And so they're looking at these charts and graphs and things like that. They might not know the admin password, but they're looking at the end result. So how do you it's really about approaching the problem of managing your data and leveraging AI to make that add some productivity for you.
Right. That's absolutely true. And overall, it just adds up. It just not adds up. It sort of reduces your responsibility of maintaining as well, right? Because we have these different categories of Azure solutions that we would be talking about, which
Mm-hmm.
just helps, making our job more easier. And
Yeah.
as you mentioned about AI, we in the first question now, so you mentioned about security and databases. So as we talk about, getting more out of our data and handling it in the best way possible, we are primarily talking about these four categories altogether, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
AI, database, analysis. And as we talk about, and security as well, not to be missed. So when I talk about these four categories, we do have certain Azure solutions and services pertaining to each one of them. So it will
Mm-hmm.
be great if we can just go through these and we can understand as to for what purpose each one of them stand for and what does it actually signifies.
Yeah. So, I mean, there are a lot, and funny enough, I actually have the list up because there's just so many. But
Actually,
what I'm going to do is actually just talk through a few of these, because I've had some experience with some of these, but some of these some quite new to myself. So, just full disclosure, one place that I really want to continue to really explore and grow as an advocate is that data security space, so that data governance. We're seeing, where you're seeing a lot of, from healthcare to government to, any other financial organizations that need that layer of security, those certificates. All that I don't know about, but I know that there's like some level of like stamp of approval that says like this data is, or this platform is okay to use for those type of organizations. But just to kind of get into some of these, so I know Microsoft Sentinel, which I think you might be a little bit more familiar with. But there's also Microsoft Purview, which I saw actually a really cool demo of Purview in action when I was at Microsoft Fabric conference about 2 weeks ago, where they're applying these things called labels, and they essentially add some granularity onto your data, where like a certain set of people might be able to access this data, or maybe just read this data, or some people have access to like modify this data. Also, there's ways to kind of like essentially set a timer on how long like this data is accessible, things like that. So that's kind of what we're seeing in specifically in the data space. And what's so important about that, especially with AI, you want to make sure that like I mentioned before, data fuels AI. You want to make sure that data is safe and that data is protected in a place that doesn't distract someone's workflow, right? Because as we know, like any kind of really security threat can really can cause some real issues in the workplace and really pause productivity, right? Because we all have to like stop and wait and kind of try and figure out like what happened, as well as how do we prevent it from happening again. In terms of data and databases, the two that are really standing out right now, and honestly, they're all really great. They're all really great services. So just to call out some of the other databases that I'm not going to really focus on here, but like MySQL is great. I know like everybody uses MySQL, PostgreSQL. Those are all really great services. And the two that I want to focus on right now is Azure Cosmos DB. This has been a really big deal right now because Azure Cosmos DB came up with this this API called Azure Cosmos DB for MongoDB vCore. So what Cosmos DB allows you to do is allow you to store non-relational data, and it allows you to create or work with databases, work with a different various number of databases. So for example, so there is the NoSQL offering, which is, document-based database. So if you're, as a developer, if you're familiar with JSON, or anybody who's working with data, if you're familiar with JSON, very similar to that. There's also the MongoDB, which are Azure Cosmos DB for MongoDB, which has some similar parity with MongoDB, just regular MongoDB. But MongoDB vCore has capabilities for vector search, and this has been a really key player in a lot of intelligent searching, specifically with AI. So when we're thinking about using these LLMs, not only can you use ChatGPT, but you can essentially use models that create what we call embeddings, and embeddings essentially turn our text into numerical formats that allow us to do our vector search that kind of will match your words and your terms, your phrases, to whatever you're searching for. So your search terms and versus what is stored in your vector database. And so how close are those numbers? And so what you get is essentially a list of words or phrases that are similar. So for example, if you're searching for a particular technology, so I'll say like .NET. So you're searching for .NET and you want to learn specifically about Blazor, which is .NET's one of .NET's or ASP.NET's web offerings or web frameworks. And so you search that, you're probably going to find something around ASP.NET MVC. You're going to find something around Razor pages, right? So like that kind of similarity, that what we call, like, I guess, that Venn diagram of .NET web technology, right? Because not only are you thinking about Blazor, you're also thinking about JavaScript. You're also thinking about Razor, which is ASP.NET's templating. So Azure Cosmos DB has been really making some really cool examples around using vector search. Another one is Azure SQL database hyperscale. So another thing that what's really cool about Azure SQL database is kind of already vector search ready, right? Because you can essentially, when you're thinking about a relational database, right, you can save a float to a table. So things like that, where you can apply this idea of vector search with some data that's already stored in your Azure SQL or your regular relational database. Now, hyperscale is really great because it's essentially, I like to think of it as a serverless technology to help you meet the demand of high traffic and things like that. So hyperscale is really great for that. So you're essentially saving yourself a little bit of money, instead of just paying for a particular capacity. You're paying for the ebb and flow of your traffic. Now with analytics, one really big one right now is Microsoft Fabric. Fabric has really been taking off. And what Fabric is, it's just essentially a unified platform for all these different workloads. So from data transformation with Azure Data Factory, with Data Factory, Power BI that everyone knows and loves. What else? Synapse. So Synapse, the ability to use notebooks. I know there's a lot more. But the nice thing about it is that, you can have all your data in this one unified location, and you can apply things like Purview to be able to really to protect your data from, and make sure that whoever is accessing that data has specific permissions to do that. And then finally, with AI, we have Azure Data Studio, which is our kind of a unified AI offering where you can across vision, text, speech. I'm sure, again, I'm pretty sure I'm missing some more there, but essentially you can really create your own AI models or deploy your own AI models with Azure OpenAI, and really leverage all the goodies of Azure AI in one platform. And the other cool thing is that you have a playground in there. So like if you're very new to AI and you're like, I don't know where to start, you can just use a playground and just try some stuff out. Another really popular one is Azure Machine Learning. If you're interested in like fine tuning your own LLMs, that's a really great service for that. AI Studio you can also do within that as well. I believe I've never tried it myself, but I know that's something that folks like to do. And then finally, Azure AI Search. So really bringing in the idea of vector search across not only your data or your databases, but across across your documents, across your images, that kind of stuff. And that's what Azure AI Search is really great for. So you can essentially use these all kind of in this, cohesive way, right? So kind of like I kind of build a picture for you. So let's say that, you have, Azure Cosmos DB database, and you are analyzing some data in Microsoft Fabric. But let's say specifically Power BI workload. You're using Azure AI search to also bring in like maybe some documents that you have to really apply some vector search capabilities and like look through some documents. And then finally, you're applying Purview to really protect that data from whomever, to make sure that whoever has access to it has the proper permissions and stuff like that. So that's kind of a very, very loose idea of kind of how they can all work together.
Right. And thank you for such a detailed answer. And I think definitely because there are way too many solutions and services that comes under the Microsoft Intelligent Data Platform. So it's like pretty customizable as well. That's like a plus point of using it, right? As you just gave an example towards the end. Just like an additional question. So since you mentioned twice about the Microsoft Purview, right? So you basically mean that it works on sort of role-based assignment, like where we have this contributor, reader, and this owner role? Is it the similar way?
Exactly. And you can even like tailor it to where you could say like, oh, well, this particular person should have access to this label or access to this data in this particular window of time. So, maybe this data, is because, you still want to leave it sitting out there, right? Especially if it's no longer in use, because that's kind of how security, risks can happen and things like that. So yeah.
That's like more of like JIT, right? Like just in time access. You just have that maximum number of hours for which you can just enable a certain role. That's how cool.
Yeah.
Great. One question that I would like to ask, like actually two questions, but I'm just sort of breaking into two different questions altogether. The first one is, since there are way too many solutions within it, right? And definitely, like if someone is migrating to Azure for the very first time, first question is like, what do you think? What services can one start with at least? From the perspective of Microsoft Intelligent Data Platform, to at least make a fair enough, secure, and cost optimized architect? That's like the first question.
Yeah, this is a great question and something I've been thinking about myself. I think my recommendation would be to start with Azure AI Studio, try the playground, because for somebody who is new to just the concept of AI or just concept of I would say like it's probably hard to say that a lot of us are there's not a lot of us out there who are new to the concept of AI, but we might be new to the concept of leveraging AI in our everyday lives. Specifically, and I'm just kind of like not even thinking about ChatGPT, right? Like we all have, got to play around with it and use it at this point. But like thinking about, okay, how can I apply the same model into my workflow, making my end users more productive. So my recommendation there would be to use Azure OpenAI Playground. And then because there's lots of ways for you to use those models and then copy and paste some code. Copy and paste. The AI Studio has option for you to copy and paste code to try them out in your own applications, and then you can kind of build on that. There's also, a lot of samples, a lot of Azure samples out there for people to try. A lot of them just are click and deploy type of thing. So using Azure, the templating services in Azure to be able to do that. So the name is eluding me right now. Using this, so essentially you click a button and you can just deploy it. So you don't have to do all the services yourself in the portal. A lot of these services are free. So for example, Azure Cosmos DB and Azure SQL actually have a free tier that somebody can use and play around with as well. And then of course, Fabric also has a trial period. So there's a lot of ways for someone to, sit with it and try it for, a long period of time and see how they can and it can help them get inspired on like what to do next. Because a lot of these services you can like change the tier really quickly. If you're like, okay, I want to use this for my business, you can just go ahead and change the tier.
Right. And then adding to it, I think it absolutely depends on one's needs and requirements, right?
Yes.
What type of, current infra they do have and what is their, aim to achieve. That's right. Thank you for the answer. The next and the last question I would like to wrap up with, because we have done with the what and the why part, we've got to do, in depth into the services. The last question I think would be good to take. If someone is planning to migrate their legacy application to modern system like to cloud or Azure, and obviously since we're talking about it, definitely the migration would also include the database migration. So in a hypothetical situation, if someone is trying to migrate their SQL DB to Azure SQL DB, like to a different database altogether, so are there any prerequisites that one should keep in mind from the data perspective, like some refactorization is required, upgradation is required so that it's compatible for smooth migration?
For the most part, a lot of these services don't require a lot of changes to your API or your code base. For example, there's a lot of even offerings to assess your fitness, I guess, or your data store for moving to Azure. So for example, the one that a lot of people know about is Azure SQL Database Managed Instance. So this is for people who might be using Azure, SQL Server. So maybe this is on-prem and they're ready to make that move into Azure. They can actually use use or leverage services within Azure, but keep their data on premise. There's also services like Azure Arc that actually also will take a look at your SQL database and be like, okay, you might not be ready for Azure SQL database, but you're ready for Azure SQL Managed Instance. So things like that, where you can essentially assess, and then of course when you assess you can also take action on that, and like Azure can actually take those actions for you as well. Another thing that I'm also meant to mention with Azure SQL Database is that they have again an idea of intelligent data services within the data platform. So they have services that actually use AI to help you maximize or optimize your database. So whether that's like you need like to maybe change your index, maybe you change your query, even if you have a SQL injection, you can actually get alerts set up for that. So things like that. Azure, and also Azure Cosmos DB has a lot of migration tooling as well. I cannot remember the name of it right now, but essentially, there are quite a few services that allow you to do that as well.
Right. Got it. Jasmine, thank you so much for sharing insights on it. And believe you me, it has been a very good learning for me also interacting with you in this podcast, because you're a maestro of database, no doubt about it. And interacting with you has literally added up to my knowledge. Thank you so much once again for joining me in today. And as we just wrap up the podcast, would you like to give any signing off note?
Oh, wow. Let's see. So I think like a little bit just of sharing what we were talking about a little bit earlier. Like I think we have done enough talking about the intelligent data platform of Microsoft, but just remember to give yourself some rest and relaxation. All of you listening out there, make sure that we're all learning at like very fast pace. All this stuff is changing at a very fast pace. Remember to give your brain a break, give yourself a break, give your body a break, because it'll make you even more productive if you take some time to rest.
I just second that point. Thank you for giving that advice. It was much needed for many people. So thank you so much once again. And I just hope that after listening to this podcast, many people just try out the Microsoft Intelligent Data Platform.